Let me ask you something honest. Have you ever walked into a room and completely forgotten why you went there? Struggled to find a word that was right on the tip of your tongue? Lost your keys, again, for the third time this week? Most men shrug this off. I'm just tired. I've got a lot on my mind. That's just what happens when you get older. And sometimes, that's exactly right. Normal forgetting is a real thing, and it's not something to panic about. But here's what most men don't know. There is a clear, well-documented difference between normal age-related forgetfulness and the early warning signs of dementia. And the gap between those two things, that's exactly where most men get lost. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Alzheimer's and dementia don't begin in your 70s. The brain changes that cause them can begin as early as your mid-50s, sometimes earlier, and the window to slow them down is open right now, but it doesn't stay open forever. Today I'm going to show you the 7 early signs that doctors say are consistently overlooked by men, and I'm going to tell you exactly what to do if you recognize any of them. Stay until the end, because sign number 6 is the one almost nobody talks about. Before we get into the signs, let's get clear on something important, because there's a lot of confusion around this topic. Dementia is not a single disease. It's an umbrella term for a group of conditions that affect memory, thinking, and behavior severely enough to interfere with daily life. Alzheimer's disease accounts for 60 to 80% of dementia cases. More than 6.9 million Americans are currently living with Alzheimer's, and by 2050, that number is projected to nearly double. Men are slightly less likely than women to develop it, but men are far less likely to get diagnosed early, because men are less likely to report symptoms or seek help. That's the gap we're closing today, and here's the most important thing I want you to take from this section. Early detection changes everything. The earlier cognitive decline is identified, the more options exist to slow its progression through lifestyle changes, medication, and targeted supplementation. Waiting until symptoms are obvious means you've already lost precious time. 1. Asking the same question or telling the same story multiple times in the same conversation. This is one of the earliest and most consistent signs, and it's easy to miss because it happens gradually. Everyone repeats themselves occasionally, but when it becomes a pattern, asking the same question minutes after it was already answered, or telling the same story to the same person without realizing it, that's your brain's short-term memory system struggling to form new memories. The key word here is pattern. 1 or 2 instances mean nothing. But if someone in your life has gently pointed this out to you, or if you've noticed it in yourself, pay attention. Normal aging versus early sign. Normal, occasionally forgetting what someone said and asking again. Concerning, consistently forgetting entire conversations happened, or not remembering that you already told a story moments ago. 2. Struggling with tasks that used to be automatic. Paying bills, following a recipe you've made 100 times, setting up the TV remote, navigating a route you've driven for 20 years, when familiar, routine tasks, things your brain used to do on autopilot, suddenly require real concentration or start producing errors you never used to make. That's a meaningful signal. The brain region responsible for procedural memory and executive function is often one of the first affected by early Alzheimer's. So when those automatic systems start breaking down, it shows up in tasks that should feel effortless. What to watch for? Making unusual errors with finances, getting confused by appliances or electronics you've used for years, needing to concentrate hard on tasks that used to require no thought at all, getting lost in familiar places. This one is alarming when it happens, and it tends to shake men up more than almost any other sign, because driving to the grocery store you've gone to for 15 years and suddenly feeling disoriented about where you are, that's not something you can easily dismiss. Spatial navigation is one of the first functions to be impacted in early Alzheimer's. The hippocampus, the brain region most critical for memory and navigation, is typically the first area where Alzheimer's damage begins. This sign can also show up as getting confused about what day or month it is, losing track of time passing, believing an hour went by when it's been 10 minutes, or vice versa, or getting disoriented in a place you've been many times before. Not to be confused with occasionally forgetting whether you turned off the stove. That's normal. What's concerning is genuine disorientation in environments that should feel completely familiar. Noticeable changes in mood, personality, or behavior. This is the sign that the person experiencing it almost never notices, but the people around them do. A man who was always patient becomes irritable. A social, outgoing person starts withdrawing from friends and family. Someone who was never anxious develops sudden, unexplained anxiety. These personality shifts happen because dementia doesn't only affect memory. It affects the brain regions responsible for regulating emotions, impulse control, and social behavior. When those regions are compromised, personality changes follow. Specific patterns to watch: increased suspicion or paranoia toward people they've always trusted, sudden disinterest in hobbies or activities they used to love, becoming unusually upset when routines are disrupted, rigidity in a way that feels out of character, or the opposite, becoming unusually passive and apathetic when they used to be engaged. If your family or close friends have commented on a change in you, take that seriously. The people who know us best often see these changes before we do. 5. Difficulty following conversations or finding words. You're in the middle of a sentence and the word you need, a word you've used thousands of times, simply isn't there. You stop. You describe around it. You say the thing, or you know what I mean. And this happens more and more often. Or you're in a group conversation and you find it increasingly hard to follow the thread. By the time you've processed what one person said, the conversation has moved on and you feel lost. Language difficulties, both in finding words and following speech, are a hallmark early sign of several forms of dementia, including Alzheimer's and what's called primary progressive aphasia. The distinction that matters: occasionally forgetting a name and remembering it later, normal. Consistently losing common words mid-sentence, calling things by wrong names, or frequently substituting general words for specific ones, worth paying attention to. 6. Loss of smell, especially the inability to identify familiar scents. I told you this one would surprise you. For decades, researchers noticed something strange. People with Alzheimer's disease consistently had significant problems with their sense of smell, often years before any memory symptoms appeared. At first, it was considered a coincidence, but the research kept pointing to the same conclusion. Here's why it happens. The olfactory bulb, the part of your brain that processes smell, is one of the very first regions affected by Alzheimer's pathology. The same protein plaques and tau tangles that damage memory centers first appear in the smell processing regions of the brain. In fact, a study published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease found that men who scored poorly on smell identification tests were significantly more likely to develop Alzheimer's within the next 5 years, even when they had no memory complaints at the time. A simple test you can do right now. Get 5 common household items: coffee, cinnamon, peanut butter, soap, and lemon. Close your eyes and smell each one. Can you identify them all immediately, without hesitation? If you struggle to identify 2 or more, that's worth mentioning to your doctor. This is not a diagnosis, it's a signal, but it's one of the most reliable early signals we have. 7. Poor judgment or increasingly bad decision-making. This one is subtle, and it's particularly hard for men to recognize in themselves, because it requires a level of self-awareness that the condition itself starts to erode. What it looks like: falling for scams or telemarketing schemes. Older men with early cognitive decline are disproportionately targeted and victimized by financial fraud, precisely because their judgment is compromised, making impulsive financial decisions out of character for them, neglecting personal hygiene in ways that never happened before, wearing inappropriate clothing for the weather without noticing. The prefrontal cortex, the brain's center for judgment, planning, and impulse control, is heavily impacted in Alzheimer's disease. As it deteriorates, the filter between thought and action weakens. If you've noticed someone close to you making financial decisions that seem unlike them, or if people in your life have expressed concern about your judgment, take that seriously. This is one of the signs most often written off as just being stubborn, when in fact it's a neurological signal. Okay, if you recognized yourself in one or more of those signs, first, take a breath. Recognizing a sign is not a diagnosis, it's information, and information is power. Here's your action plan. Step 1. Talk to your doctor and ask for a cognitive screening. The most common one is called the Mini Mental State Examination, or MMSE. It takes about 10 minutes and gives your doctor a baseline reading of your cognitive function. You can't track decline if you don't know where you're starting from. Step 2. Get your B12 levels checked. Vitamin B12 deficiency is extremely common in men over 55, and it produces cognitive symptoms that are almost identical to early dementia. Before assuming the worst, rule out the simplest cause. Many men have reversed their brain fog simply by correcting a B12 deficiency. Step 3. Lion's mane mushroom. This is the supplement with the most credible research behind it for brain health. Multiple studies have shown it stimulates the production of nerve growth factor, which supports the growth and maintenance of neurons. I'll link the one I recommend below. Step 4. Protect your sleep. This is the most underestimated brain protection tool available. During deep sleep, your brain's lymphatic system flushes out the amyloid beta proteins that accumulate in Alzheimer's. Less sleep equals more buildup. 7 to 9 hours every night is not optional, it's maintenance. Step 5. Stay socially connected. Social isolation is one of the strongest independent risk factors for dementia. Men who maintain close friendships and regular social engagement consistently show slower cognitive decline. Call someone this week. Join something. Stay in the conversation, literally. Your brain is not fixed. It's not set in stone at 55 or 60 or 70. The research on neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt and build new connections, is one of the most hopeful stories in modern medicine. But it requires action, it requires information, and it requires catching things early, which is exactly what you've just done by watching this video. Please share this video with someone you care about, a friend, a brother, your father. Dementia touches nearly every family, and most people don't get this information until it's too late to act on it. One share could genuinely change the course of someone's life. If this was useful, hit like and subscribe to Ageless MD. We cover the health topics men over 60 actually need every single week. Next week we're covering blood pressure, specifically the one daily habit that's silently pushing your numbers higher every morning, and the 3 natural approaches proven to bring them down. Don't miss it. Take care of your mind. I'll see you next week.